All right, I got to ask.
Yes.
And by the way, welcome to the Don Steve Plus podcast. We're glad that you're here, part of our Plus One today.
Yes.
But last time we talked, you were saying that this new year was one of expectancy. In fact, that was the word that you feel like God had kind of given you, expectant. And so what's happened? Is any big thing happened so far this year? I know we're not that far into it. But.
No, I don't think I can come up with one. Well, that's not true. That is not true. So my mom is not well. And you guys know this. My mom has dementia, Alzheimer's. You can't really diagnose, but it's been a tough season.
Yeah.
And I have the most wonderful stepdaddy in all the world. He is 90. And he is caring for my mama and doing a tremendous job. Tremendous job. It is, it's always something that on our hearts as a family, we kind of want some extra hands in there. But he's just done a great job in handling everything. But it's kind of time, you know, because he's just tired. He's just exhausted. So, I was just asking the Lord. I'm like, okay, how are we gonna do this? Like you, I know you know who. I don't know who. Hospice is involved. How do we best handle this? And the Lord, I'm not kidding you, Steve, the Lord immediately, like within 24 hours, somebody that we know that is caring for my mom through hospice said, hey, by the way, if you ever need extra hands, I kid you not. And this lady comes so highly recommended. She just cared for a family where the lady passed away, so it freed up her schedule. She's a retired nurse. My mother's a retired nurse. This gal has worked in nursing homes, so she knows skilled nursing, all the things. And I'm like, okay, that's amazing.
Too good to be true.
Too good to be true.
But it is.
And Lord, how can we best introduce this idea into the family? And I want you to know that someone went before me even in that conversation with my folks, and to the point where my dear sweet stepdaddy was calling me saying, hey, when do we get to meet her? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Lord. So, yes, I have seen in what could seem small, but when you want to honor your parents, it's huge.
It's big.
It's so big. For him to go before us in that.
I think that's one of the things is that sometimes when we are not looking for the small things, we so easily see them. We don't notice them. They just kind of pass by because we're always looking for the big thing. We're looking for God to do the miraculous kind of thing.
That was miraculous.
Right? But sometimes it is kind of the small things where you see how God had to do this to make this happen, to make that happen, to make this happen. And then this, what seems like not this huge deal, actually was a pretty big thing that he orchestrated. And it's pretty miraculous the way in which it played out. But sometimes you got to be looking for what he is doing. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes I can get so fixated on what I want and my plan and the thing that I think should happen that I forget to look for, well, Lord, what are you doing?
Yeah.
How are you moving? And what does it look like for me to come alongside you and your plans?
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. You did that a lot through Experiencing God, didn't you?
Oh, that was like
Henry
one of the
Blackaby
major themes
Clark
of
King.
the study Experiencing God. Yeah.
Where you're looking for where
God is at work and look to join him in what he is doing. It basically start with, God desires a love relationship with you that's genuine, real, intimate. And then out of that, you're like, all right, Lord, what are you doing? And what does it look like for me to adjust my life to what you're doing?
That is usually a big adjustment.
Oh, it's,
for
yes.
Human people.
It is, because you're putting somebody else in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
And a lot of us like to be in the driver's seat.
Dude, that is so challenging.
And some of us even fill our schedules and our lives up with really good things. Even a lot of religious and church things. And we realize that maybe at some point it's gotten so busy with the good, we've not left time and room for the best.
Oh, yes. I think that's such a great way to put it. And I know Experiencing God terms it in that way. Those authors did a tremendous job just guiding us to the Word, guiding us to the leading of the Holy Spirit. One of our pastors recently was talking about very similar things. Like,
Yeah.
as you're thinking about your life today, look for God, not what you want. And you sum that up so beautifully, that if we really, really want what God has for us, then we have to let go of what we want. And that's so hard, Steve.
Oh, it can be really hard.
And
But
yet we trust him. We say we do.
we say exactly. We say we do, but when push comes to shove, do we really? And I think one of the things that is just kind of common to the human experience is we want what we want.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we even want really good things. We want things that actually you can find a Bible verse that says that that's a good thing.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Can't we, though?
But very often we can allow that good thing to crowd out the better thing, which is that intimate love relationship with Him. And next thing you know, we're, wondering why we're not experiencing God.
Mm-hmm.
How many of us have said, man, I want to be used by God to do something great. I see these people on a stage, a platform, of this, of that, starting this ministry, doing this kind of cool thing. Man, isn't that so cool how God has done that through them and used their life in that sort of way? Those people probably had to go through that moment of being broken
Mm-hmm.
by Him, to be
Mm-hmm.
used by Him, laying down their idols and their wants and desires and whatever, to say, all right, Lord, it's in your hands. You got to do this. I think sometimes the reason we don't experience God and we're not necessarily used by Him to do those some of those bigger things is because we're so fixated on, I want to do what I want to do and I want God to bless my thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Lord, you sign my blank check.
Yeah.
I don't want to sign yours. I want you. You're good, but only if you give me what I want. How many times on Facebook do you see, or any social media, do you see someone saying how good God is, but it's because the answer to prayer was what they had hoped for?
Yeah.
The new job came through, got a new vehicle, somebody was healed, and God is so good. And I see those things and I agree. And then I wonder, but what about when we don't get our way? When the person is not healed, when our car breaks down and there is no replacement, is God still good? And the answer is yes.
Right.
But do we believe that?
I think sometimes, in a sense, if you were to ask some of us that question, if you would ask me that question, at times in my life, I would have said, yes, I believe that. But does my heart reflect that? Do my actions and attitudes exhibit that? And the honest answer probably would have been no.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I can think of a season where, I'd been praying for God to answer a prayer for a long time. And He did not give me the answer that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm, doing all sorts of things for Him and praying and asking Him to do this thing. And would you answer this prayer in this way? And, I'm really praying and believing that it's a good thing.
Sure.
That I'm praying about and praying for. But He didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember still remember the days, week, season where I realized I actually was really angry at God and wasn't even aware that I was angry at Him because He did not sign my check, my blank check. I wanted that prayer answered in that specific way and was going about trying to make it happen and asking God to make that happen through my efforts. And He didn't do it. And realized, oh man, I'm angry at God. I didn't even realize I was. And when He finally showed me that, that changed everything.
How did you work through that? How did He show you? And then how did He walk you through?
It was actually through a Bible study where there were some kind of deep probing questions, and you had to kind of sit with that. questions that kind of led you down to the path of, well, if you're not experiencing answers to prayer, why not? If you don't see God moving and doing these things, why not? And wrestling through that, and checking your heart and your attitude. And it was actually walking through a Bible study where we were looking at that type of thing, where all of a sudden the light bulb went off. Mm-hmm. It was like, oh, that's what's going on right here. And so what he did after I kind of had that epiphany of I'm angry at God was I went back to, again, the nature and the character of God and who he is. And to borrow that Henry Blackaby language again of experiencing God, that going back to the truth of God is a good and loving God who desires a deep and intimate love relationship with us. And so, going back to that idea of, well, if I don't have that deep and intimate relationship with him, if I don't see or sense that I'm walking in that intimacy with him and seeing him moving and answering prayers, like, why not? Mm-hmm. And I realized the problem was me. My prayer request to become an idol. Oh. And I needed to lay that idol down.
Sure.
And once I, in a sense, smashed the idol, then that relationship with God was where it needed to be.
Isn't it interesting, though, because, as you said, it was a good prayer request.
Yeah.
It was something that I would say you wanted to honor God by him answering that particular prayer request.
Right.
And when he didn't, and then you realized it was an idol, you talk about a challenge, especially to somebody who's walked with the Lord for a while. When you realize that good prayer request has become an idol and you got to lay that down at his feet, you're like, wait a minute, but you would want this. Don't you want this, God?
Right. It only makes sense that you would answer this prayer. Yeah.
And then him to expose in your heart and mind, no, you have made this bigger than me.
Yeah.
Making it an idol and laying it down. And so our pastor in that same sermon about, looking for God and not what I want also said that to make him known. And how do we do that? Like, glorify God with our lives, make him known, not ourselves. And in a world where social media is the king, and I think back to your prayer request, in those seasons when we're grieving and we're, beseeching heaven for something, how do we recognize, even along the path, Lord, how can we make you known? Because God's not leaving you. He's not forsaking you. He can't.
Right. Yeah.
He cannot do it. It goes against his very nature if he was going to walk away from you. So he's with you. But do you look back in that season and go, I see you now. I see you now. If you tweaked anything about your side of that equation during that, now that you have the hindsight 2020 clarity, was there something where you might have let go early? I mean, we can't armchair quarterback in hindsight, but just something you learned where maybe if you're in another situation, you'd go, okay, Lord, help me recognize you in this sooner, even though I think I want you to do it a different way.
Yeah. So I think as I look back at that and think, okay, I think one of the things that I hope I learned from that is that when God is not answering a persistent prayer, to much, much, much sooner do the heart inventory and ask, what is the motivation of that prayer? What is going on, internally in me that is causing that to be that persistent prayer? And is that thing becoming an idol, or is that thing a thing to persist in prayer about?
Sure.
To rightly order my priorities as well. Is my priority the intimacy of my walk with him, or is my priority to get that prayer answered the way I want it to be answered?
Yeah. You recognize the pride, usually in hindsight we do, right?
Right.
The pride of, but Lord, my way is better, because even your word says. And isn't that funny? Like we can even take his word and apply it and somewhat twist it to apply to our own
Sure.
thinking. And it goes back to that same question, like, okay, then Lord, how are we making you known as opposed to making ourselves known? I read through Luke going into Christmas of 2024. And as I read one chapter each day, because there's 24 chapters, I was reminded how the disciples did this too. Like, Lord, who's going to be next to you in paradise?
Right.
Like, can I be on your right-hand side? Can you be on your left? And then to give Mary such a hard time because she broke that alabaster box over his feet. But she had her priorities straight.
Right.
She sat at his feet when, Martha was making a fuss, and she sat at his feet when he was reclining at the table before his crucifixion. And you realize that she just humbly wanted to be near him.
Yeah.
And what a conviction that is to me as I think about, Lord, what do you want me to do? Do I just want to sit at his feet? Or am I so culturally conditioned that I think I have to be busy in order to be worthy of even what he's given me to do today? Yeah. Hey, don't be lazy. I'm not advocating that. He tells us don't be slothful. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm too busy to spend time with him when that's really what he's asking me to do. Because if I don't spend time with him, how am I going to know?
Right.
How am I going to make him known to others? Because out of the overflow of my heart, my mouth is going to speak. So am I talking about him and what he's doing? Or am I talking about me and my agenda and what I hope I'm going to get to do this year? Or,
yeah.
That perspective can be very subtle, but the shift is massive if you're going to be participating with what he's at work doing. And we're talking about salvation here. Like, this is eternity.
Yeah.
Hanging in the balance. And we have the good news.
We do have the good news. And it's one of the things that I found so interesting of a season of just a couple of years ago, and you're well aware of this, when I was going through that experience in God study, my life was very busy with good things, from leading Sunday school classes and life groups and this and that, and being involved in a Bible study fellowship, and just lots and lots of really good things. And a lot of those good things were tied to the church, the Bible study.
Great things.
Yep. Christian radio, just lots of really good, faith-filled Christian things. But what I realized, I was so busy checking the boxes and doing these things for God that I was missing opportunity to engage with other people about God. Mm-hmm. In a deeper and more intimate way.
How mad at me were you during that season?
How mad was I at you?
Yeah.
I don't remember
that I was. You don't recall
being
mad? Oh, good.
Yeah.
Either that or time has just washed that away. Well, because we would talk about that. We had conversations about your busyness.
Yeah.
And of course, my subtlety is my strong suit.
Right.
Right? And just saying, you're going to have to give something up.
Right.
Because you were killing yourself.
But what was hard, like, they were all good things.
Oh, I
right. And
totally know.
What I feel like God, and it, you know this, like, I was involved in a Bible study that was taking me away from home 2 days a week. And but it was a good thing.
So
it was a Bible study. It was getting deep into the Word. It was talking about it with other men.
Yes.
Like, how could that be the thing that God would want me to give up?
And you and my husband were in that together.
Right.
Which I always thought was a great, cool thing.
Yeah.
That you guys could connect in that way, Bible study, because we connected in the studio where we worked, and then I got to connect with your wife when we go to lunch. So that was like the perfect little situation.
It was great. Right? I didn't want to give that up.
Of course not. And I don't blame you.
But I still remember the day. But God,
yeah,
I still remember the day
yeah.
sitting in my office and working through a different Bible study.
Right.
Where it was like God just smacked me upside the head with 2x4s. Like, you are so busy doing things for me that you're missing me. You're not. You're doing things, quote unquote. I'm putting that in air quotes. You're so busy doing things for me that you're not spending the time with me. I wasn't sitting at Jesus' feet like Mary.
Right.
I was being busy about stuff like Martha.
I can hear Larnell Harris in my head singing, "I Miss My Time with You," as you talk about that season in your life. I don't know if you remember that song.
I do.
It
Yep.
was from,
Yep.
I want to say the 80s, because I was in college when it came out. I remember I was at a friend's house when he was on some program and he started singing that, and I just wept. That can apply any day of the week when you realize you're so caught up in either life away from him, life for him, as you air quote that, or life with him.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a really big difference in all three of those scenarios when it comes to our lives. One third way that our pastor recently challenged us in living for the Lord, looking for him and not what we want, and glorifying him, making him known to others, was serving. We often talk, we don't have time to read the Bible or spend time with the Lord, and we don't have time to serve others. But if you look at our culture right now, Steve, I think one of the biggest things that we have missed out on is serving.
Yeah.
Serving. And if you talk to some believers, even folks that are maybe more advanced in years, but they've served the Lord for a long time, and then maybe their circumstances have changed, it's like their hearts and their minds kind of have this dry spot, because it's like, well, what else am I supposed to do? But as you look at the situations, you go, oh, the serving years are done. So I was at my mom's recently, and I found one of my grandpa's journals. Talk about a servant. That man was a servant until dementia started to take his mind. He talked about people that would come to the home, and they did Bible studies always. Now, this particular journal was after my grandma died, and so he didn't do as much of that after she passed. But just to talk about the people that he talks to, and he would always share Jesus. He would be one that if he went to a restaurant, he may leave a $2 tip. Listen, he thought that was a lot, so don't call him cheap. He just didn't know. He came from an era that tipping was not,
different.
So big. Yeah. But he would put that in a gospel track because he so wanted everybody to understand that Jesus died for you. So he would leave that. And I think of people that would, poke fun of somebody that would leave that on the table. But I knew his heart because I saw him do it in person, as well as that passive way of leaving a tip in a gospel track. So his heart was to serve, to be in the community, helping people, helping our family. He talked about chopping wood, and making sure that mom had what she needed, he had what he needed. Just a servant's heart all the way around. And we have so many opportunities now in our churches, in our community, to maybe even take a step of faith, because learning something new is always challenging, and it's uncertain, and it's uncomfortable, and we don't want to do it because we don't know. And then you step into it and you're like, oh, week 2, week 3, okay.
Yeah.
I now know I can do this alongside other people too. And so to have these big platforms that you were talking about, that's not what Jesus is looking for.
No.
The disciples, again, were being told, hey, the least is going to be the greatest.
Sure.
And the greatest is going to be the least. So whether you have a big platform or you're serving in, cleaning the bathroom at the church, that's where you want to be.
Yeah. Well, there's something about serving that just resets the heart as well. Yeah. I'm sure you learned a lot of that from just watching your grandpa, right? And I see that in you and in your family, in the way in which you open up your home and you serve people and do these things. And I know you've been involved in serving different ministries in this area, in the homeless ministry, and plating food for people. So there's something about serving others that I think is so good at just getting our eyes off our own issues, our own problems, our own struggles, our own pride, whatever, and looking at others and saying, okay, how can I help? What can I do? And, it just is such a, well, at least I found it to be such a great mental and heart reset.
Yeah. Levels the ground pretty quickly too.
Yeah.
When you see that people are people.
Yep.
Everybody has struggles. You think about your own struggles. You see somebody else struggling and you go, oh. It was probably one of the things that the Lord used most in my adult life is to teach me that we're all the same. We all have struggles. We all need Jesus.
Yeah.
We have to have him for forgiveness of sin and any hope of walking this side of eternity with integrity or the fruit of the Spirit or the things that he calls us to. We have to have his Holy Spirit doing that because we can't do it. So going back to making him known and serving is such a great way to be able to do that. So some practical things that we can do, because every day we're going to have a new opportunity to either pick up our phones and bury our heads in it, pick up a television program and bury our heads in that, even books. I mean, all things that are not bad in and of themselves unless they replace Jesus.
Yeah, it can't be doing that, right? We don't want to ever replace him, although it is so easy.
Oh, it's easy
to find ourselves doing that, not even realizing that we're necessarily doing that. And so just you're encouraging me. I want to encourage all of us to look at what would it look like in your life? What does it look like in my life to do those three things that you were talking about? To take my eyes off my priority and look to, okay, God, what are you doing? How are you moving? And what does it look like for me to come alongside what you're doing there, to make you known, and then to serve others and to share the hope of the gospel with them as we do that.
Yeah. Yeah. We're kind of without excuse because we have so many great things that encourage us. Power of the Holy Spirit and the scriptures, that's the first two things. Relationship with Jesus, which if you want to know more about that, what a relationship with Jesus, it's needhim.org. That's needhim.org. We'll get that in the show notes. And our website, donandsteveplus.com, will also get you linked to them so that you can have that conversation today. But then to take an action step and let us know. We would love to hear how God is directing you and the action steps that you take by faith in following him. Thanks for being here. It is Dawn and Steve, and you are our plus one. Please like and subscribe.